Hello and welcome back to another video. In today's video, I'm going to be continuing the journey of all of the jobs I've had since I left school. Hope you enjoy. So today's video will consist of me telling you about the next job that I had, which was working in the rostering department at British Airways. So the previous job to this was working on the ticket desk, and I decided that I wanted a 9-to-5 job, which this was, but it was they call it flexi time, so it would finish any time between 4 and 6. So it was quite a flexible role, and I really liked that about the job. So the job itself was working in the rostering department, as I said, rostering the flights and the duties for the cabin services directors. For short, we call them CSDs at Manchester Airport. So there weren't that many CSDs. I'm trying to think now how many there were. Probably about 15, something like that. So there weren't that many, but as it was my first rostering job, it was quite good, a good way to get into the rostering and learn how it all worked, because there were a lot of different agreements that the CSDs had with the company, and a lot of different contracts, so all of those had to be adhered to, obviously. So what the job consisted of was making sure that all the CSDs had the same number of New York trips, and then making sure that they had any approved special requests for trips, and then requested days off that had been authorised were actually put onto their rosters, and then that they didn't go out of their hours, they were within their hours, their contracted hours. So all of that, it was quite an in-depth process, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed learning. It was a new challenge, learning new systems, learning how to communicate to the CSDs, as these were a different kind of customer, still a customer, but a different kind of customer that I was now working with, which was quite interesting. So following on from this, I transferred to rostering the flights and the duties for the juniors at Manchester Airport, and there were hundreds of juniors, so this was quite more of an in-depth and more intricate task than rostering the CSDs. So I learned a lot more when I was doing this. There was a lot more involvement with all of the juniors, and I used to speak to a lot of them on a monthly basis. So a lot of this job was sitting down working at a desk, and as I mentioned before, I like to have a job that is quite varied, and I can move around a little bit. I don't really enjoy being in one place all the time, sitting at a desk. So this job was that. I did go up to Manchester probably a few times a year to speak to the unions there. But as I say, it was only a few times a year, so it wasn't really as varied as I would like. So I started to think, what could I do now? So I still wanted to stay with British Airways, so a job came up in crew records and allowances department. So I applied for the job, and there were 2 roles, and me and another girl who I was friendly with got the jobs, and we started to do the role. And I think we did the role for about a year. So the crew records and allowances role involved rostering the training that the cabin crew had to complete on an annual or 3-yearly basis. So this was the safety and emergency procedures, fire procedures and first aid procedures, and any other training that was needed during that period. So also part of the role was processing the allowances for the cabin crew. So as I mentioned before, when you go on a trip, you get allowances. And so our job was also to process all of the allowances and make sure that they were paid to the cabin crew at the end of the month. So we were doing the job for about a year, and then British Airways decided that they wanted the role to be based at Manchester for a number of different reasons, which I'm not going to go into now. But so that was a little bit disappointing, although it wasn't my dream job. And as I'd been doing the job, I kept thinking, oh, I'm not sure this is the job that I really want to do. And I need to think about what I want to do in the future. But I never really had a career in me like that I wanted to do. Like some people can be at school or at college and then they instinctively know what they want to do, but I just never ever had that. So, and I long to have that feeling, but I just never had. And obviously I'd enjoyed the jobs that I had. I enjoyed being dental nurse, I enjoyed being cabin crew, I enjoyed working on the ground, in all of the jobs that I'd had. But you know, crew records wasn't really the job. Crew records and allowances wasn't really the job that I wanted to do long term. So although I was upset that the job was going to be moved to Manchester, I wasn't, you know, I thought, well, I'll find something else. Anyway, around the same time, British Airways were going through some financial problems and they decided to close the base at Birmingham. So I was then actually made redundant and had to find or think about what job I was going to do next.